Thanks for staying with us. Recently, a Yoruba Nollywood actor, Rotimi Salami, waded into the DNA controversies, saying, and I quote, "DNA test is not important unless someone is dragging your child with you." What are your thoughts on this? Join the conversation and call us on 081-270-53687 or 091-390-76948. This DNA matter. You know, initially it was not in our awareness or consciousness. We've always known over the years that, you know, people mix children. So you come for weddings, you come for burials of a late man, and people are whispering behind that, this one does not look exactly like us. The nose is not like our own. They are not as tall as us. They are not as dark as us. You know, we've always known that it happens in the African setting. But it seems to be becoming rampant now, with a lot of people trying to travel or get some contracts, and then they have to do a test, and they find out that something has been mixed somewhere. But in your thoughts, do you think it's necessary that we go down that lane? Or should we just ignore it and move on? It's life.
If you have any reason to suspect or to question the paternity of your child, and you feel so strongly convinced to go ahead to find out, because maybe it will give you peace of mind, or it will rest, you know, whatever questions there are. Because sometimes the result helps to put things in, you know, to clear doubts. And even it's not always about getting a bad result. Sometimes it's a good result, and then you feel bad for feeling that way about your child. But if you're constantly questioning if a child is yours or not, I think it's only right or only normal that you find out if the child is truly yours. That means you do not have any peace. So it's really for your peace of mind and for the sake of the family. Sometimes even wives will tell you, go ahead and do this. But then, of course, we've heard even on this table that there are consequences for those actions. If you suspect a wife of having cheated, is what you're saying, and bringing a child in that's not yours, and finding out that that child eventually is yours, then you would have to have that conversation of why you think this happens. I think it's not something you should just get up and want to do, except you have reason or cause. Something comes up in the family. Suspicions, yes.
Auntie? Okay, so Rotimi Salami, I'm a fan, serious fan of him. I love his works, but I totally disagree with him on this. I think it's a loose statement from him, and I think he should consider a lot of other things. So you don't just not trust your wife, talk less of just go and do DNA. There must be grounds for you to do these things. And for some men who just want to do exercise, everybody's doing it, then you're totally accusing an innocent person. But if you've had a relationship where things just didn't look right, the other party too would know. So it's okay for both of you to think, let's do a DNA. What a DNA does is something that I'm totally averse to. A DNA clears the doubts around the child and also ensures, because I'm averse to you giving the child of A to B. A child belongs, and the Quran says they must be called by their father's names. There's no adopting somebody else's child and saying, as long as you're being the parent, the child knows. You can always love that child, but let that child know who their father is. The sanctity of the home or family is extremely important to some people. No matter what the death is, the situation is in a family, let that child know where they belong. You can still say, okay, because I have loved you from birth, you're my child, no matter what, but this is your father. The father can say he doesn't even want to see the child. You will give that child love despite knowing who the child belongs to. That's a different decision. Not to say you have your suspicions, you now want to adopt a child, you don't care because you have been the one who loved the child from birth. I don't agree. I'm averse to that. So a DNA is necessary whenever it is necessary. In every own way it is necessary. It is necessary.
So for me, there are two scenarios here. For some people, it's not like there was any form of suspicion. Everything was going well. They did not suspect you cheated. They did not suspect you mixed children. But because we had to travel, we had to do something, and they are requesting that we need to be sure that these are your children, this comes out. For other people, you've suspected that this person's nose is different from mine. So that's a different occasion. But my question is, what about the mental health of the child? You have always been in a loving relationship with this woman, and you did not have an idea, no inclination that anything happened till you found out mistakenly. What happens to the mental health of that child? Are you even paying attention to how these children are going to receive this? Because all they have ever known is love between mommy and daddy.
Yeah, it's important to have that at the back of your mind, the mental health of the child, but it's also important to put in that same conversation the mental health of the father that will be finding out that I have raised a child and loved this child, and he actually wasn't mine, biologically mine. I was deceived into, because men are raising children that are not theirs.
Yeah.
They know of it, and they're loving that child and giving their all as if that child was biologically theirs. It's the deceit that is the problem. And so sometimes you ask of the adult to make the sacrifice where, okay, you deal with your mental health issues. You and the wife or the mother sort this out and protect that child, maybe for as long as you can, but because we know how the world is, nothing really stays secret forever. Some things come out in future. That child will grow up and trying to do, some health issue comes up, and then that conversation starts. So the conversation now, I think, is at what age is the best time to tell a child when you have found out that
you're not the father.
You're not my biological child. There used to be a time I would say here categorically, just never say it, never bring it up, except when health issues come or as adults. But I have seen, recently I've seen some situations that happened where they're already adults, and it messes with your mind seriously.
Even as an adult?
Especially as an adult.
Wow.
Because I think as a child, it seems you have the time to grow and understand and recover and start to understand your new dynamics. And then you grow up understanding that. But as an adult, you have built your life on this foundation that you think is the truth. And then all of a sudden, everything is shattered. It takes a long time for people to, get over it. So it's best, really, even if a mother suspects that this, it's best to handle this as early as you can, to give that child time to sort of recover and accept their new reality. That's
I think we
my
need to
opinion.
go on a break. When we come back, we take phone calls and messages. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. We have Douglas on the line from Germany. Good morning, Douglas.
Good morning, Obi.
Good morning, sir. You're live,
Well,
sir.
I'm happy you people are discussing this topic because I had some discussions with some people recently and we're talking about this in Nollywood. For me, from my own angle, I don't quite agree with Labi, what is his name? I over-agree with him. I mean, my agreement is even over his own his stand. Why am I saying this? I mean, in everything we do, we must understand one thing. Anything we do that brings a child to the world, that child that child is not coming to the world in agreement. I mean, there's no consent from the child to come, so we must always protect the child. So, for me, the concept of parenting is not in the context of impregnating a woman, but in the context of nurturing a child. So if we understand this, I mean, for me, I wouldn't like to know if I'm really the biological father. What interests me is taking care of that child. Wow. Now, if I've invested enough time, invested enough love, affection, emotion, and otherwise raising a child, and out of a time somebody comes and tells me it's not my child, what does it change if I'm not the biological father? The love, the affection, the care, all the things I've invested, this counts for me more. Knowing this child, raising the child counts for me more. One other thing is, worldwide I know, once you're married to a woman and a child is born, the owner of that child is the father who married the woman, no matter who the donor of that sperm is. So what counts for me more is that child. And we must always do everything to protect that child. Even if I am the person who is having an affair with a married woman and the child is born, I will do everything to protect that child. I will only come in if I know the child needs me, and I will come from a partial angle.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Thank you for that aspect.
Let's take
some messages.
Biliki says DNA shouldn't become the norm if the relationship was based on trust, except there's a mix-up at the hospital and not decided upon as a result of doubt. Akota says, DNA is not a big deal to me because I must do DNA when I get married and start having children. Not that I don't trust my wife, but for safety because they swap babies at birth. So for me, it's a must for everyone. Bilki says, the reality is that several situations have warranted conducting DNA now for medical reasons to ensure there is no child swapping and to establish the true paternity of a child. I can't imagine having a brother, uncle, or any male relative being given a wrong child or falling for deception. It's not fair at all. People have died discovering such disastrous news several years after being lied to. Unfortunately, we've got to discuss it. Oladizi says, in animal kingdom, when an alpha male emerges in a lion pride, he will first establish his bloodline to avoid future problems. This involves eliminating the existing cubs and young lions in the pride.
Thank God we're not lions.
Oluwaseun says, DNA needs to be done when it's needed. And the other one said, the lesson from nature. That's Oladizi who talked about the lions.
Okay, before I come to you, let me quickly take this call. Perpetual from Agor Palace. Good morning, Perpetual.
Yeah, hello, good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
It's my first time calling.
Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And please, I really want to say something about this DNA thing. See, there's a lady where we used to stay before. Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, now, there's a lady. There's a lady where we used to stay before. A very churchous lady. And all of a sudden, the baby that she carried, that she gave birth to, we now found out that it wasn't the man's own.
Oh.
So
How did you find out?
Okay, I don't know. Somehow, she found out after all the wahala. The man, the man had to chase her out of the house. So her life became shattered. Oh. So somehow she later found out that the nurse swapped the baby. So out of impulse, she stabbed the nurse to death. So as we speak now, the lady is even at Kirikiri serving. So, I don't think to me that DNA, I still believe in the test, but I don't think it is necessary because sometimes it wakes up a can of worms. So that's my own opinion.
Thank you so much, Perpetual.
Perpetual, let me quickly respond. Issues are different from the reactions that they bring. So the man probably didn't handle his own well. If you don't doubt your wife, but you had to do a DNA because you didn't think that the child looked like, or imagine a medical situation occurring to a child that you don't have and your wife doesn't have. It will be because the child was swapped. So you sue the hospital and you do what other people have done in history. Find your child and bring your child back. I had a story in the UK of a 22-year-old. She was 22 at the time the family found the baby. They never had, the mother breastfed another baby. And after 22 years, she was able to find her own child. So you can do that. You can do whatever it takes to get your child. What I don't support is have another person's child. You know, in the South, in some Southern cultures, when a woman comes pregnant to another man's house who marries her, no matter the age of the pregnancy at the time of the wedding, the child belongs to the man who married the woman, even though he's not the biological father. But in the Southwest, in Yoruba land, you
won't find your father, right?
Yes. A child belongs to the... So that's African. But in Islam, a child belongs to the father. A child that is illegitimate belongs to the mother. Oh. So there are ways these issues are sorted out so that you don't cause unnecessary rancor or disturbances in the child's life. What the child knows the situation, you then go on counseling the child. There are assurances you can give a child that, yes, in my bloodline, you are not my child, but I love you despite that. And if the child is confident enough in that reassurance, there won't be a problem. But we fear problems as if they don't have solutions. I don't agree.
Okay, we have a caller from Lithuania. I didn't get the name. Good morning, sir.
Lithuania.
Yeah, my name is
Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Yeah, I am quite interested in this topic. There is something I would like to just chip in. You know, we are Africans. And at the same time, we are all women, you know. when it comes to DNA, it plays a very huge role in a child's life, talking about health issues. So it is important for the parents to know who is the actual father. It has nothing to do with love, because when you love a child, whether you are the biological father or not, you will nurture that child to the best of your ability. Now, what do we say about gays that are adopting children? Let us not try to deceive ourselves with the culture that this thing is not important, when at the end of the day, it will cause a very big problem, not only for the child, but also for the man. Because if tomorrow now, at a certain age, you find out that it's not your own, it shelters you. But when you are able to know in time, you can determine, have a discussion with the person. Sometimes it happens accidentally. Sometimes it is act of destiny that these things happen. The love you have for your child, whether it's your biological child or not, does not change. But what changes is we human. There are people that even if they find out it's their child, they will still not have that love. If they don't find out, they will still not have that love. So
thank you so much, Mr. Chris. We have another caller, Mustafa from Ikeja. Good morning, Mustafa.
Morning, madam.
Good morning, sir. Yeah. Go ahead, sir. You're live.
Okay. My take on DNA test is that actually when the data arrives, DNA must be done because there's need for sincerity in parenting. You understand? Because what is finding out is the mother of a child. But in the case where there is swap, there's need for DNA. So if there's a union between a man and a woman and there's a child, there's a unit of the families in between. There's need for sincerity of knowing who the parent actually is when there is doubt. That helps the child, that helps the father, and helps the mother. But does not stop the father from loving the child. It actually, in his own spirit and his own thinking, he has accepted the child to be his own. That's now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mustafa. But there's we saw online that there was a clinic opening in Lekki area, and they were giving about 75% discount for DNA. And before they could say Jack, over 100,000 people have registered. And I'm asking, how are we not sure that a lot of people are just taking advantage of this too? Let me just try. Not like this, we're suspicious or anything happened. Why do we have to go down this route?
Yeah, I think that is why we have the conversation of just don't do it for doing sake. Oh, it's trending now. But the thing is, we have spoken about this DNA issue so often at this table. And the reason we're talking about it is because Nigerians are talking about it. So it's become something that is on the lips of everyone. People are hearing other people's story and they're questioning like, oh, who do I trust now? And so when an opportunity of a 75% discount, because we know how expensive this can be, people are like, okay, maybe I should use the opportunity to do so this. Now I think...
However, that 100,000 is, you know, just so social media. We're not sure. Yeah.
So I think what people are saying is, this is a slippery slope you're about to embark on. Don't start something you may not be able to finish or you may not be able to handle. If you have no suspicions, if you're happy, everything is going on well, just face your family and move on. Don't just jump on the bandwagon because everybody's available. Because the emotional, mental, you know, factors to this that you may not be able to, you know, figure out. So I think that's one part. But, you know, we always also think about DNA only in terms of paternity fraud. A lot of, we have had callers now on social media, they have opened their eyes to the fact that children are being swapped. Now, for me, I think that is one of the reasons we should have DNA, because I just cannot imagine the pain of, because once you raise the child, you realize the child that you have is not yours, you just constantly have that pain of where is your own child? Who is raising your child? Especially if maybe you are of a person of certain means and you're thinking, is that child getting the sort of nurturing love, and attention and material things that I can afford my child? Who has my child? And that will constantly be in your mind. And I think it's important because I've seen stories where parents will eventually find their children, but their children are unwilling to come to them because this, as far as they are concerned, is their family. That's the family that they know. So for me, that would be the only reason you just step out and do it. And then in that case, you have to do it quickly and early.
Let's take a breather. The conversation continues after this break. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. I would like to ask, what are some other reasons why people may need to have DNA? Because aside from the fact that you're suspecting this is not mine, or you're about traveling and you needed to do the DNA, I've had cases where a child is, trying to find out who the father is, and the mother is saying, I can't tell you, I've moved on, let's not have this conversation. Are they the reasons why you can decide to, okay, let me go ahead and take a DNA? How do you get the samples? What are some other reasons, really, that we can look for this DNA?
So this is my take. If you feel that somebody, or you're told by somebody, not necessarily your mother, in some cases you found out from close family friends that this is who is suspected to be your father. If your mother ever opened up to anyone in the family, but she's unwilling to look into the matter further because of pain, or other circumstances surrounding it, you can have a DNA. You can, sue the person for abandonment as your father, which forces him by court order to do a DNA. To say, okay, establish I am not your father. It can't just be by words of mouth. If you can show...
That's if you know him.
Yes. And you can request, approaching him and asking a DNA, he might just be unwilling to grant it. So a court order can force him that, okay, let's know, are you the father or not? And even after it's established that he's the father, you don't have to, as long as you're an adult, force anything anymore in the relationship, except you're an underage. So there are different ways you can request DNAs. In in child custody issues, a lot of times in the courts, you find the courts compelling DNAs that maybe the mother is now, some women will just throw the defense, okay, it's not your child, can I just go with this child? And so the father will say, no, you can't just say it's not my child. You had this child while we're married, I have reasons to suspect this child belongs to me, to believe that the child belongs to me, so the court will compel a DNA. So there are different other ways why DNA is done. For whatever reason it is needed, let it be done. Some people would rather that they don't open a can of worms, like they call it. Yeah. But I think that's living in doubt. It's even worse. Imagine you living in doubt for, let's say the child for 40 years, and the father had this suspicion. The suspicion informs, how he leaves a testament. I know a father who has a child. The child presently is of almost 60 years, and he disowned that child.
Let's take this call. Isom from the UK. I'll come back to you. Good morning, Isom.
Hello, good morning, Obi.
Good morning.
Yeah, I just have this contribution to make. I'm a lady, a married woman. I have a son now, and if my husband actually wants to do a DNA, I don't mind. Even though my son looks exactly like my husband. But when we talk about DNA, the question is, why do you want to know? Is it because you want to love the child less? Or because you want to abandon the child? Or you just want to find out that your wife is cheating on you? Because if you say you want to do a DNA test, you must have a reason for it. It's not enough to do a DNA test because you just want to know. Why do you want to know? So sometimes when we try to do some of these things, what's the motive? Because even if somebody comes tomorrow to tell the child that the child is not yours, if the child is loved, better, or for me, I don't think it matters because the child didn't be brought into this world. And secondly, we're talking about swapping children in hospitals. I don't know how that works. But is there no other way we can go about this thing? Is there no way of having another person to be with the mother when the mother is having the baby? Take a picture of your child and then do it.
To find a way to protect ourselves. Thank you so much, Isom. Miriam, your final thoughts for wrapping up.
I know there are other reasons too that people push for for DNA that I find quite insulting and annoying. Where there's like a family disagreement, property, the patriarch of the home has passed on, and all of a sudden people are being pointed at and saying, you are not the child. The patriarch, the father did not question the paternity of his child. The father may have known or may have not have known, but has accepted to raise this child as their own. And then when it now comes to sharing property, someone from outside, a cousin, a brother, or someone, all of a sudden says, well, we don't even know if you are. So my question is, when you go to get this DNA, is the clinic morally obligated legally to ask the reason why you're doing it? And is it just enough for someone to just wake up one day and say, you know what, I just need to go and check if you're my brother, if you're my sister or not? Or if that person has the right to, you know, ask for a cease and desist, you cannot take that on me. Or else everyone will be taking DNA on people just anyhow. Because
I can
it's
take
now,
DNA on you now.
75% is free. It's almost free. Let us go. So those are the reasons why I feel there's some reasons that are unethical, you know, immoral, why we should push for DNA. But what I also think is important for a society and as a government as a whole is, if there's a question of child swapping, if we do have DNA, we'll have data. And then we're able to even trace, because we see in other countries where they're able to trace a certain nurse in the 1970s who was in a particular hospital and her job was to just swap children. So those sort of things are important.
After how
so
many
those are the
years?
sort of ways I would say, okay, it's important that, you know, we know if that sort of fraud or scam is carried out.
Yeah, but if I hear you correctly, you are saying, is there any way that we can protect human rights while we go for this DNA?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much for your contribution, ladies. That's all we can take on this segment. When we come back, we move on to other topics. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. Your view